Hello, Wenecwtsin, and welcome to Coming Home, a limited sacred conversation series for the children of the past, the present, and the future. These conversations are hosted and facilitated by Charlene founder of reGEN Media, and feature the wisdom of Wenecwtsin, whose Indian name passed down to him, Wenecwtsin, means big voice that speaks the truth. We invite you to join us for conversations of hope, revival, and of the ancestors we intend to be for those yet unborn.
Wenecwtsin, I am so grateful to you and for our conversations. I deeply appreciate the wisdom and the knowledge transfer of Indigenous teachings that you have been so generous to share with me. And one of the most profound lessons that you've taught me thus far in our friendship is that we can heal ourselves and our families in 3 generations if we choose to keep this a sacred priority. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, welcome your thoughts around the whole concept of safety and that feeling of safety and being safe. Curious what comes up for you when you start to think about that.
Well, in my journey, on this earth, I learned that safety really is about myself. Do I feel safe with myself? Safe with my thoughts, my actions, and what I do. And it's really interesting sort of process, because if you don't feel safe with yourself, how can you feel safe with others? And it's coming to know who I am and why I do what I do. And that sense of safety in that way, it really grounds me. And it's really a process, right? It's a lifelong process, because when you're a child, you're born into the world, you're sort of exposed, you're really quite innocent, and you depend upon adults. And I think in that, the cradle board and how you're looked after as a little one, and you're safe. I think as you grow up, you learn that the human world is not that safe for a number of reasons: physical safety, emotional safety, etc. And as you walk that path, you learn to stay away from certain people, because it's that innate sense of instinct inside of you: hey, I don't feel safe here. Or in a physical situation, hey, this is not safe here. You just got that, it's that real, if you will, that primeval response we have about survival, and it's about safety. And so how do we create that? But first we have to feel that within ourselves. And as I've grown, I've come to understand that safety is not something on a physical level. It's really on a deep sort of emotional and spiritual level, where you can feel it inside of yourself, and the calm you can feel, and the things that you go through in life. And anything that happens is that you have to have that sense of self and sense of safety. So I think that's that journey inward we take. And that's what I've been doing. And to create safety for myself is to find that place within myself and answer that question, why do I do what I do? And in my own thinking and on my thought process, reinforcing that. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that look like in ceremony? It's really that sense of feeling, that sense of understanding, and creating, again, that's part of the cognitive life route. You have to be able to feel safe in order to create that understanding of what happened. And I think that's what's really important. I think when we journey in life, it's really, as we begin to understand it, that's one of the keys to healing is safety. And with that is ceremony. It sort of goes hand in hand. And, in places that I feel safe, it's kind of interesting, because I can literally feel anywhere I'm at, I feel safe. But the most places I absorb a lot of the senses on mountains, going to a top of a mountain and up in there in that air, and next to water is another one, whether it's lakes or creeks or rivers, but that sense of feeling really grounded to that part of who we are. And I think that's where the ancestors come in, and they have a sense of grounding you and helping you and creating that sense of safety. That's why I feel the safest. And I think that that's whether I'm out, even when I'm out hunting or out fishing, it's just that it's really interesting, just that connection.
I was curious about the idea of self-protection and, if it is something that you've had to build up, because of things that have maybe happened in the past, how do you work with that and around that in situations where it's not needed, but you still go there? I was curious if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, I think it's that whole process. It's an innate process in our ability to survive, fight or flight, or freeze. That's the response. It's a physiological, psychological response we have to any kind of something that may hurt us or bring harm to us. And so it's a skill that unfortunately we develop based on our interaction growing up and the things that happen to us, right? It's being able to understand that not every situation is a life or death situation, even though it may feel like that. Is that our body doesn't really understand, or our brain doesn't compute that, hey, this is not life or death. It feels like it, but it's not. And being able to take that and to mold it in a way that it creates action in yourself of what you need to do. Okay, this has come up. What do I do with this now? And so that's part of my healing process, is to take that process and to turn it into action. And I think that that's what it's about, is that we can sit on things and stew and fester. It's like a wound. Once wound is open, and then it closes over, but it still festers underneath. And sometimes you have to lance that wound to heal. And that's like our emotional wounds are very similar, is that we're wounded by what's happened, and a lot of we have many wounds, and it's a matter of, okay, it comes up again. How do we then deal with that so we can let it, literally the poison within ourselves, flow out, get rid of it? Because we have so much we hold on to, we have to get rid of this stuff inside of ourselves, because that's not who we are. It's what we've created around us for our safety, and we have to go beyond that. And I think that's the process. And it's hard to sort of put a specific sort of a specific thing that needs to be done. It's that evolution as a human being, the evolution in terms of knowing and understanding yourself as a human being, your relationship with yourself, what you need to do, and all of that. It's an evolutionary process. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't go, click and you're there. It's life. It's a process. Like we were discussing earlier, it's ups and downs, and how you deal with them is really critical. Without safety, you can't go and venture into those places you have to go into. And you have to feel it. It's not a matter of only, yes, physical space safety, but also you have to feel it inside of yourself. And then you can go, venture down that road. And it creates freedom for yourself inside. That's what it does. It really creates the freedom to be able to respond in a way that's not going to be negative to yourself. Because negativity and the whole concept of, what we're seeing after COVID with the advent of people are really angry and just sort of lashing out, it's just like, okay, that makes sense to me, because people had to, in 2 years of isolation, had to go inside of themselves and see who they were. And they didn't like what they saw. And so then with the 215, it opened that door to say, oh, okay. It sort of opened up a whole process, not only for our people, but people around the world, healing. And I think that that's what this is about. It's unfortunate in many ways that people with the sort of post-COVID, the mental health issues, the addictions and all those things skyrocket. And there's a reason for that, because people in isolation, had to deal with themselves, and they had a hard time doing that. So they reverted to old patterns of managing pain, old patterns of managing their stress, and a lot of that is their own addictions.
If you were chatting to someone about who leads a team of people, a team of of leaders, let's say, and people are trying to come back to work, whether it's like corporately or it's a government office or maybe in healthcare. People are coming back to work, and some people are still working from home. But because of what you just said, through COVID and through some of the happenings of the last couple of years, where reestablishing a sense of safety is pretty important. I'm curious if you had any guidance or advice or thoughts to potentially share with leaders who are struggling with reestablishing safety for their teams.
Yeah, I think that, for the leaders, the managers, and those people in charge of people, the first thing is look after yourself. If you can answer that question, why do you do what you do? Because if you're triggered by this behavior of people that you're supervising, you can't lead what you don't know. And I think you have to understand this stuff and get into that process of their own sort of self-reflection, if you will, self-development, whatever they require. Again, there's no sort of one size fits all. Everybody is different in how they approach it. And I think that people, leaders especially, need to get support themselves, professional support, spiritual support, whatever that looks for them. They need that at this point, because they're going to be dealing with this all the time, so that they're not going to be inundated and burdened with the pain of others, actually, is what it is. And so they can just help manage that, let it go, but then they can lead, because then they've gone and understood a process that then they can lead their staff through, because they need to understand it. And I think that's a big part of it. And again, there's no one size fits all. Like, for some people, it's actually going out to the land. It's spending time, around a campfire. Others need professional support, psychologists, whatever that may look like. Others may need sort of different types of alternate type of therapeutic processes, but it's not one size fits all. It's being able to understand your people and let them know that, yeah, we understand you're venting and all these things going on, but we need to help you get to a place that you can actually become productive again, because people get consumed with this stuff. And it's a way to really lay out a path. It's not an easy path, but I think the leaders have to first look after themselves, find a way to find their own safety, find their own processes that are going to work, so they can then lead others through a process. Because that's what's going to work. That'll have long-lasting, sustainable effect, but it's not going to be easy.
One of the things that I learned a couple of years ago from a good friend of mine, Echo Alec, who you've met, she really talks about having this kind of like this self-care kit, and having it right beside you, and it helps to kind of reestablish that sense of safety at home, which is a great starting point. Everything that you feel you need beside you to take care of yourself, whether it's like a candle and a journal and some sage or a feather or, a special rock. And I think for me, because I'm such a kinesthetic person, like I have to see things and touch things, that really has been beneficial to me. And I try to make a bit of a ritual of, lighting a candle and using a blanket, to calm myself when I feel like I need it. And I was curious if there was any rituals or habits that you find yourself doing on a regular basis that just kind of help to calm your system and encourage that sense of safety.
Sponging is one of the, I don't do it all the time, but I do it at times that is required in a process, and I use it in such a way that it's, I do it for my entire house, right? And that's one of the things. But the other thing I do is I go to water. If I really feel I need to get grounding and back into it, go to water. Because I've been taught that water is our most powerful medicine, and that it can help you in many different ways. And so understanding that water has been here since the beginning of time, and that it's been the whole process of helping us let go And so I use water quite a bit. But I think the most important thing is, sort of, if you will, in the mornings when I wake up, it's like trying to center myself, if you will, and to allow my being to calm down if things are going on, just to form of meditation in some ways, but it's kind of like it's a ritual of just calming. And I take in the morning, I keep laughing because I say it takes me 2 hours to wake up. Because what I do is just gather myself, right? And that's a ritual, and it's important to me because then in the world that I've come out of, I was just inundated with all kinds of things. So this last while for me, it's been really about having that space, so to speak, and being able to do what people would say do nothing, but it really is doing something because it's a rejuvenation, sort of revitalization of self. And so that's what I've been doing. And it's kind of it's a ritual that I do every morning. And sometimes it takes the form of silent prayer in my mind and my thoughts, because I've known and understood that thoughts are powerful. And the thoughts that we can create into action. And so if negativity is going on within me, I try to release them. And I'm always looking for, a sort of a path forward. And I'm always thinking, when I think sometimes for myself, I feel, well, hey, I'm thinking 7 generations ahead. Like, how is this going to impact those that are not here yet? It's just really interesting sort of process I have. And that's just the way I am. But that's how some of the things that I do, in terms of process, I think it's just a matter of, primary one is to welcome yourself into the world in the morning, to give thanks for the journey to the darkness of the night, as we say in our language, Wenecwtsin. And that's what that means, is I've made it through the night. And just next day, and it's an ongoing process. So that's kind of how I do it. It's there's no one thing, it's a multitude of things.
My last question is about building trust, building a greater sense of trust, which obviously will result in safety. So building trust, whether that's in a new relationship or in reestablishing trust, trust with yourself, a greater sense of trust. Curious what comes up for you, because I know that really things only move forward. One of the things that I've learned in this journey back to my, where I'm from is things only move at the pace of trust. And it's very hard to balance that in a fast-paced world.
Trust is an interesting thing. It's like safety. It's got to start within yourself, if you trust yourself. But what that is then really about developing a relationship with yourself. How do you develop that relationship with yourself? Because that's in essence what trust is. When you're developing relationships with others, do you trust? You have that sense of trust, right? And it is about relationship. So how can you build that relationship with yourself so you're confident and trust yourself? So whatever you're going to be going into, you can create that aura of trust, if you will, or that sense that people hey, this person knows themselves. I feel safe with them. Because it is about safety. Because you can't, it's one of the, how can you trust somebody if you don't feel safe? How can you be safe if you don't trust somebody? Just goes back and forth, right? It's intertwined. But I think that's kind of how it has to be looked at. Is first, it's that journey within in terms of relationship with yourself, and how do you trust? And you trust yourself. You trust in what you're thinking. Do you trust in what you're doing? Do you trust that the situations you're going into are going to be safe? You trust yourself. And a lot of that background noise and white noise that happens is all those messages around, well, you can't trust this person, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then you get that sort of, it gets confusing for people. But if you really trust yourself, that white noise will go away. And then you'll have that interrelationship with trust and safety. And you'll be able to sort of hand in hand work with it. Because that's the key. And I think it's, again, about reciprocal relationships in this case with yourself. What you give to yourself, and you have that reciprocal relationship, because you have to think about it in the concept that, yeah, you're a human being, it's human formed, but also you're a spiritual being. You're an emotional being, and all those parts of you that in our creation story talks about us being those beings, and how do you bring that together as one, as one being. And that's the journey of life, actually, if you think about it. And I think that it's built on safety and trust that are intertwined. And so I think that's what we have to understand. And I think the third component of safety and trust is love. It's kind of like the thing of love in terms of, and that's really a hard thing for people to talk about, self-love. How do you love yourself? Can you look at yourself and say, I love you? Because that's that relationship again, is with self. Because if you can do that, then the love you have for others will sort of shine through. But that's that whole thing. Those three elements, I think, are really critical to how we as human beings sort of go on this journey we're on. The journey we're on this earth, and it's around trust, safety, and love. And so how do we intertwine those to make it work for ourselves? Because it's one of the keys, right? And because, like I said, just sort of interacts with each other, and I think it's really an important part of who we are as beings, as human beings. So we can just be who we are, interact with the world in such a way that everything is stress is an interesting thing, because everybody has stress. We interact with it differently. The most successful people are not those ones that ignore stress, or those that can manage it in such a way that they can move forward in their life. And I think that's what it's really about. So how do we help people on that journey? A journey of self-reflection, a journey of asking the question, why do I do what I do? Can I trust myself? Am I safe with myself so I can be safe with others? That's the whole concept. It's that relationship with self, and trust is no different.
Thank you for joining us for Coming Home. This episode was brought to you by reGEN Media, the first and only Indigenous-owned and female-led wraparound ecosystem that facilitates the creation, funding, and distribution of regenerative media projects through a relational filmmaking model. Together, we aspire to turn the page from the last darker chapter of our history to the next, more hopeful and empowering chapter. Visit us again next time for more shared wisdom, knowledge, and another conversation. For more information about Coming Home, reGEN Media, Wenecwtsin, and more, visit regenimpactmedia.com. Until next time, puru and goodbye.